Oftentimes, while developing an application or writing a code, you might have faced a situation where the code or application may not work and some exception is getting thrown from that application. I have faced that particular situation a lot of times. Therefore, what is the next option which is available to you? The next best option is to debug that particular exception which you are getting and to find out the root cause of that exception and try to clear that off. In today's video, we'll be discussing about debugging and little things that you need to take care or know before starting debugging your application. So before jumping onto the video, I would like to request everyone to subscribe to this particular channel to get notification about the videos that I am posting. And if you like the video, do press on the like button. And jumping onto the video, though, so the first things first, before starting a debugging, you have to go to the tool options and you have to check the debugging symbol setting. For this particular setting will determine what all symbols that gets loaded in your application when the debugger starts. So you have to set the symbol server properly from where to fetch the symbols required for your application, and to set the cache directory where to cache the symbols temporarily so that the load will be much more faster the second time around, and to set this particular setting whether to load all the modules or load a specific set of modules. So once the symbol servers are set, then the next process is to attach to that particular application which is running. I'll just try to run this particular application up, and yeah, the application is now running. I will try to attach to this particular process. So how I will attach to this particular process is using Control Alt P, which is a shortcut to invoke this attach to process dialog. So I am using currently Visual Studio 2022. Therefore, it has some advanced option to select that particular process which you are debugging using a select window command. So when you do that select window, what happens is it will actually give you will be provided an option to select that window which you are interested in, and here you will be seeing the process which is getting selected. If I select this particular thing, then windows terminal.exe gets selected here. If you are not if you don't want that particular process, you can manually select that particular process here. So that is particular new thing which came in Visual Studio 2022, and there are some other options as well. Automatic refresh options are also there. So this is a way to select the application you need to debug. Therefore, before selecting that particular application, you need to specify which kind of code you are trying to debug, whether you are trying to debug only your managed code or it involves some native or C++ code. You need to specify it manually here. Otherwise, you can leave it to the debugger to determine which type of code you are debugging. Better to select which kind of code you are debugging initially here. Therefore, it will be easier, or it will much more predictable, so that you will be assured that those symbols are getting loaded. So you can select this particular code which you are debugging, and then you can select your process of interest. So currently my process is find counter pupils. This is my process. If I'll just try to attach to this particular process, and when you apply the breakpoint is enabled. That means the symbols are loaded for this particular application. Many a times what happens is if you attach to the correct process also, you will not be able to, breakpoint will be disabled and it might be saying a warning icon that the symbols are not loaded for this particular application. Then what you can do is you can invoke this modules dialog. You can go here and select you can just type in modules. It will come in the here debug Windows modules. Therefore, once you select it, this dialog comes up which will list the list of modules which are there. So if you don't find your symbol status here, then you can forcefully load the symbols by right clicking on that particular option and then clicking on symbol uh, load information, or it is already loaded. Therefore, if you press on this particular thing, if you want to load symbols, you can click on load symbols, then it will forcefully load the symbols for that particular assembly. So that thing's done. Once your application loads up, and the symbols are loaded for your particular application or for the particular dealer which you are debugging, then you can continue the debugging process. Let me put breakpoint here. Since this particular code is already executed, I will try to put in, I will try to add a particular input to this thing. It is expecting some input, therefore I will try to add a. So the breakpoint got hit here. You can see the value of this local variable by just hovering over that, and you can also change this particular value. If you want to test a particular control flow in your program, you can change this particular value during the debug time. So if you want to change to update existing stock, you can just edit that into U and press on enter. For the switch C variable, it's changed and it will take you to the corresponding case. So this is how you can change the value during the runtime. And also you can observe a watch on this particular value. You can add a watch. You can right click and you can add a watch and it will display a value here. From here also you can change the value. So that's the basic thing about it. And then if you want to see the call stack which you are in, you can just type in call stack here, and it will display it will open the Windows call stack. It will give you the in which call stack the control is currently in. And this is particularly helpful if you are dealing with some recursive application or some module which is getting called from external caller or from the main function. Then you will be able to determine from which flow this particular API is getting called. That is where the call stack is important. So there are other windows as well. If you go to this debug settings windows, you will see many windows like breakpoints window which will list the list of breakpoints which is there in your application. Only one breakpoint is currently active, which is this one. And the other window which is of importance is the output window. This is pretty helpful if you are debugging a particular flow. Sometimes what happens is when you are debugging a particular code, sometimes there will be an API call made here. Assume this is a console.readline. So here, and the implementation of console.readline might be huge, or you are not interested to go inside the implementation of console.readline. So if you want to know whether the console.readline is executing properly or there is no exception thrown in that, you can make out in the output window. So when you just execute this particular console.read line, then what happens is in the output window, if there is any exception getting thrown in that particular control flow, it will list here. It will list in the output window. That will be pretty helpful in debugging a complex application to know from which place or which API call that exception is coming instead of going into that particular function call implementation. So here we didn't debug through this console.readline and we'll be able to see some exception thrown from that here. So that's the basic of this thing. And if you want to go back to this particular statement, if you have already crossed this particular statement and for some reason you want to go back to this particular statement, you can right click on this particular statement and you can do the set next statement. So then the control goes back to the previous line and you can do some additional. You can go inside the particular API call and check the values that you are getting there. So that's the basic things I want to cover in this particular video about the basic setting that you need to do before debugging and what all things you can do while debugging your application. And there are some advanced things that you can do. You can actually flag a particular thread which is there so that you can actually mark a particular thread so that if you're dealing with a multi-threaded application, if many threads are involved, you can identify a particular thread if it is flagged. That is the importance of flagging. And there is a threads window, if I am not wrong. So if you go to Visual Studio, you can see the GPU threads are there. So if you are using GPU, then you can use the GPU thread window. Otherwise, there is normal threads windows is also there. I guess debug windows threads. So this will list the list of threads which are active in your application. It's basically useful if you are dealing with a multi-threaded application. So if you see this thing, there are only main thread and there is worker thread. Therefore, since I have flagged this particular thread, you are saying this thing has flag. If I remove this thing, the flag will be removed. So that's the thing that I want to cover in this particular video. If you liked it, if you some things felt new to you, then please like this particular video and share it with your friends. Thank you.